so like gear has kind of, or an amplifier specifically, have kind of evolved throughout your career, like, starting with mainly like single channel tube amps, and then
Yeah.
into like solid state amps and rack systems, and then to multi-channel amps, and then moving to you know uh digital solutions like Kemper and stuff like that, and plugins and stuff like that. Like, do you have anything in particular that like you feel like there's been good changes that way, or do you find all of those tools useful, or are you kind of glad that there's a continual evolution, or would you rather that
Mm-mm.
things kind of moved back?
No, I like the evolution. I mean, to me, it helps you stay curious, right? I mean, part of music, you got into music because you were curious, right?
Yep.
Something sounds different. So, right there, just even that statement, it sounds, right? So, which would lend, from an idyllic standpoint, progress keeps on moving. Well, by nature, progress is going to move. In terms of amplifiers, yeah, you want new options. But I find myself through over an arc of time, right, decades, um, the one thing that keeps coming back to me is how does something feel when you play it,
Right.
right? I mean, I got this amp that's sitting down here. When I hit those notes, when I hit them softly like that,
Yep.
that to me, if it feels like that to me, whatever that feels between my fingers and the fretboard of whatever guitar, then I'm interested. If it doesn't feel intimate to me, it's like I don't discount an amp because everybody plays differently, but for me, it does. Consequently, the amp closest to you over there has been with me. That was in the '90s, I believe, like '91 or something like that.
Yeah.
Not many amps have really touched that matchless because it whatever Mark did when he made that thing. I think it was in the garage stage when he. But there's something very immediate about that amplifier. It reacts different to all the different guitars that I would play with, and so nothing is really given it a run for its money until you're D40. Yeah, yeah. So long answer to your question. I'm not. I'm not cynical about new amps. Maybe healthy skepticism because there's
Yeah.
not that much new.
No.
I mean, you have a great Fender amp. Great like Ultra Overdrive. The Bogner has been wonderful for over the last 20 years on that. I got Marshalls around here somewhere. I have no idea where they are. Maybe they're over there. But I mean, the increment for growth is so small. It's kind of
Yes.
like on a football field. It's the red zone, right?
Yeah.
So until you hear that little market difference, you're not going to react to it and play something new.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of amps that have come through this little room here, and most of them don't make the cut.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you that like the mark of any really great piece of gear to me is less about its voice, because when we're talking about either amplifiers or drive sounds, right? Like modulation stuff is very different, but to me, when I play clones or clones, right?
Mm-hmm.
The number one thing that I'm looking for is a feel, because the voice is almost always going to be
Sure.
very close. You're gonna have very few designers that don't get really close to how it sounds. But if it feels kind of stiff, or just isn't inspiring to play, that's honestly the mark of a great piece of gear to me is, do I feel inspired to play? And normally what
Sure.
happens is, if I get something really cool, I sit down and start playing it. If I lose track of time and I
Right.
keep playing it, that's what makes me want to own whatever that piece
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so you've had like several amps over the years. Obviously, your matches, is it DC-30?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that do that. Are there any other specific like standout amplifiers? I mean, you mentioned the Bogner, the Ecstasy, and you've got a Diesel VH4, VH2, yeah, VH4 here. Do you have any like holy grail style amps, or things that you're like, no, this thing is, unbelievable?
No.
No.
I
Okay.
mean, I mean, I use that Supro a lot. The Deluxe Reverb sounds really good. To me, I mean, we were talking a little bit before you start rolling camera about there are collectors and there are people who use them as tools.
Yeah.
I'm of the latter, and it's not that I don't love. I mean, this is a nice guitar. This is 1960,
Yeah.
right? I love it. I love it because it sounds great. I mean, the fact that it's a 19, I guess it's in pretty much mint condition. I guess
Yeah.
it is.
I would not have guessed that's a
This
1960.
is a sweet gift. This was on my 60th birthday. It was sitting in 2020. So
Yeah.
right. So mid. Well, no,
Right
right
in
at the
the
beginning
COVID.
of COVID, right?
Yeah.
This is on my front doorstep. Keith Urban sent it over that day. Sweet. I mean, what a gift giver, huh?
Yeah.
I was born in '60, so this is
That's amazing.
And I've never really played jazz master my whole life. Grew up loving a guy, Wayne Moss, who played jazz masters. I loved his guitar playing in Barefoot Jerry. Never had one. It's not kind of my style.
Yep.
I love P90s now. As a matter of fact, this and the amp, it's like I'm obsessed with this sound. And for me, I also, it's like if I hear it in the midst of something I'm doing on a record, like for me, since I'm not known as a live player, mainly a studio rat, it really has to jump out from the speaker, or even more importantly, fit into what I'm doing.
Right.
And you can tell really quickly because again, the bar with that matchless for certain kind of clean, a little bit distorted sound, it's just very high, and that's why that amp has survived so long.
Yeah.
So I've been trying for years to find something, because when that thing goes down, does that mean I have to retire? No. So anyway, so and I'm not a real super hype guy. I'm the same way about my guitars, all this stuff. I found a few things that really work, and then you get a couple little pedals, and that's about it. And then for me, because I'm mostly known as a producer these days, I just hire somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty easy job.
I highly doubt it's an easy job, but I.
Oh no,
yeah.
I'm really the guys that work with me.
Yep.
If this is what I'm, they have an easiest gig working for me because I just want them to be them.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I know if there's certain things that I would need to do, I mean, well, I can do that, and that's not
Right.
a problem. So I'm hiring guitar players these days because I want specifically somebody different from myself. Number
Right.
one. And so it makes the job a lot easier. Consequently, it makes my life. I love playing the guitar to this day.
Yep.
I just don't love. I don't like changing strings, and I don't like having to switch too many times. So
Right.
I'll guess a guitar for a part, and if it's not, I'll try one more. If not, then I'll hire somebody. But the same way about amps, effects, I don't have much interest these days in them, as long as I can get a pretty decent solo sound, just a little bit more saturation. But
Right.
as we were also talking about earlier, it's in the fingers. You
Yeah.
find that as long as something isn't detracting from that.
Yes.
But it's funny, certain amps do, and you can
Yeah.
it in 2 seconds. It's like it doesn't relate to the way your fingers work.
I that resonates so much with me because years ago I got a chance to try an overdrive special,
Mhm.
the one that's at Blackbird,
Oh yeah,
and man, I gotta say when I first plugged into it, I was so deflated because I expected that amp to be really
too much hype.
I thought it was going to be really kind of buttery and creamy, like that there was going to be a ton of sag because you think about the players who use those amps
Yeah,
and you don't ever think stiff,
Right.
right? And I know that I don't know most, but almost all Dumbles are different.
yeah,
And the one when I got to play it at Blackbird, I remember thinking this isn't great. And it's really difficult to play, which I know there are some guitar players who love that. I know there's some guitar players who like to kind of fight their instrument or their amplifier a little bit because they feel it brings the best of their performance out.
Sure.
I'm not that guy. I want it to be as comfortable as possible because that's when I'm going to play at my best. But then I've played some other Dumbles since then that are amazing.
Yeah.
But that to me is the mark of a great piece of gear is, how does it feel underneath
Yep.
your fingertips? So you touched on something about effects that I wanted to ask you then. So do you, when you're dealing with delays, reverbs, anything like that, do you do most of that in post then instead of using, either rack gear or, a pedal board or anything like that in front of amplifiers when you're tracking?
Yeah, for me, post, because I'm a little bit more lazy, and because of what I mentioned a minute ago. A bunch of friends in Nashville here. That are such great, not just great guitar players, but they're great sound, great with sound. Oh, you were with Derek, right?
Yes.
Yesterday. So So Derek Wells, I not only hire him for his touch, his parts. He's also a wonderful record producer. So his mind, but also his gear. I mean, his you've seen his layout. It's like, so if you want those sounds, or Tom Bukovac was with me the other day, and the same thing. I mean, Tom is such a he's a painter with
Yes.
and it's just so. I've got 20 years on all these guys, and so my patience with gear ran out about 2 decades ago. And it's not that I don't, I love it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I personally moved my emphasis onto something else with the producing. So
Yeah.
as a guitar player, it kind of follows suit. I mean, if I find a piece of gear that I really like this, whatever this Supermoon, right?
Yep.
Obviously not an analog piece of gear, but it sounded great. And it was because of a record I was doing. Well, it was another Keith Urban reference. We were doing a song that actually was a real big hit for him. Didn't know it at the time, but I loved the sound. He was just doing some backbeats, hits, and it was uber. Just this thing is like Echoplex gone bad,
Yep.
or gone good. But I specifically, I love when I hear a piece of gear or a guitar that makes me play a little differently.
Yeah.
That's what I'm more about. And again, I think there's something. I think with age, we with age you want less.
Yeah.
I mean, at least that's the way I am. So I'm like, I've been writing some songs. I actually may do a little recording on my own, which I've been putting off for quite a while. The music that I'm writing is, I mean, this amp is perfect for it because it's just right between the two, where it's all dependent on my touch.
Gotcha.
And that kind of simplicity is what I enjoy, because I spent so many years doing that. These racks of just they look like a cockpit basically.
Yep.
And I think at certain points in your life that stuff is what's interesting. It's also part of what I did to get hired. Now, since the getting hired is not so much the idea. It's just trying to articulate something that I hear inside.
Yeah.
So I've kind of let that go to some other people.
Yeah, I find like when you're talking about less, I feel the older I get, the less gain I use, and the slower I play, like the more
That too.
it's about how well do individual notes ring through.
Yeah.
That was when I'm not our designer at Revv, and when I met Dan, that was the thing that kind of shocked me the most, was the individual note separation that I could hear even at really high gain,
Yeah.
or on the high gain channels on stuff. I just wasn't used to an amplifier that could do that. Yeah. And the older I get, the more that's where I keep moving to. I mean, I still love trying every new little thing under the sun, because I being on my side of the industry, I'm also fascinated by other builders and what other people are either creating or attempting to create, right? And I want to see, like, okay, is that cool? And same as you, I want to know how it feels more than anything. Yeah. So
I think another thing about maybe this is just an evolution of age too. When I was younger, I didn't want the raw edges exposed as much.
Right.
You kind of feel vulnerable in that situation. It's like everything has to be perfect. Now I'm going the opposite way, where I'm appreciating the stuff I appreciate in other people. I could never appreciate in myself when I was younger. I didn't want any of those raw edges to show. I want to be invincible.
Right.
Well, as you age, you realize there is no invincibility in your future, and you get more interested. Well, I am. Sounds like you are too, right?
Yeah.
In that quirky side of something that's not perfect, that makes you have to work for a little bit more. Like for instance, playing this guitar. The Rick, that was another guitar that really opened up my eyes to this part of our discussion. Is it was harder. I had to work more with that guitar. And I liked what I heard, because it feels worse than it sounds. Put it that way.
Okay.
And the amp thing, kind of that combination with the guitars and amps, again, that's why I only use a couple different amps, because I want that consistency now,
Yep.
and I want that surprise. So if an effect comes along that kind of enhances that, I mean, people send me effects all the times. If you open that closet, you probably shouldn't, it's my fault, but there effects abound, right?
Yep.
But I mean, a good little delay vibrato goes a long way for me.
Yep.
A couple, just analog sounding delays, which you can get a mountain full just in here that sound good enough.
Yes.
But still, you also talked about some of the direct amps. Those don't thrill me quite as much. I still
Right.
like the interaction of the microphones with the speakers.
Yeah, I mean, we have, the direct, the 2 notes torpedo embedded direct
Right.
technology built into all of our amps. I still think you're hard pressed to beat a cabinet. And if you're playing live, I really love the idea of sending the signal direct to front of house, because then they've got something that's really easy to manage. And my favorite cabinet sound for our stuff is an SM57 and a Royer 121.
Which is what's on this for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I were playing live, there's no way I would use a Royer, because I'm not going to play anywhere that, I'm not going to be playing a big stage.
Right.
And I wouldn't take a ribbon mic out. So I do love the fact that I can send that to front of house, and if I have in-ears, that's what I'm going to hear.
Right.
But I really still want to have a cabinet on stage that I'm going to be able to feel it, because so much of it is about feel, like you said.
Yep.
And I like feeling air move when I'm playing. Like if I'm playing with a band, I hate, like I play at my brother's church, and it's all in-ear monitors.
Right.
And that does drive me a bit crazy. And when we first started, it really drove me crazy. I'm sure, or I shouldn't say I'm sure. How was it like for you? I mean, you've been a studio guy for so long. When you first started going from playing an amp live and hearing it through a cabinet live to hearing it through headphones or through studio monitors.
I can't remember, because I started in the studio when I was like 15 years old.
Right.
So I didn't have the kind of career path that most people do, being in
Right.
bands at first. I wasn't in many bands. I mainly went straight in the studio, and I just got used to that.
Yeah.
But it really matters to me. I mean, I was going to ask you a question about this thing too. Do you have anybody that mic this and also take the direct simultaneously?
Yep. Lots.
Because
Yep.
that and there's no phase issue between the two.
The latency, there's a tiny amount of latency. There shouldn't be a phasing issue,
Okay.
but you might be able to notice it. It's pretty close.
Cool. I mean, I may experiment with that, but it's to your question, no. I've always listened in headphones.
Gotcha.
We did have a rock band at the end of the '80s. I never did in ears, so
Right.
so it was, I can't stand this when the sound's right. It's too mid rangey for me, so I always had to turn my amp away from me.
Right.
My fingers would freeze up when I heard that real biting edge, the part of the sound that would actually get out there. So I could, as long as I didn't hear that, I was fine. Otherwise, then I would just slow down.
Well, that's when I play at my brother's church, we can mix our own in-ears because it's a small church, so we don't have a proper monitor engineer. I turn my guitar way down. And
Same here.
It's because otherwise, as soon as I hear myself, I get self-conscious about it, because I'm like, oh, I'm too loud. I got to pull it back.
Yeah.
And, and if your amp's quiet, as long as you can still hear it, then you'll go for it a whole lot more than.
I love the guitar players though that can do just the opposite, because I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
If I hear it too much, I don't like that. I play to. I mean, even when I play in here, in the box, it has to be relative to everything else, like the way it's supposed to sound.
Yep.
If I'm too loud, I just don't play as well. But so there's some guitar players I know who can just play really loud. Have you heard Mike Landa play live?
No, I haven't. Would love to.
If you get a chance, go listen to Mike. That dude can dial up a solo sound that sounds perfect, and it's as loud as anything you can imagine, and he still plays with that silky touch.
Man,
Amazing.
Robert's here with us, and I don't know if you remember this, Rob, but we were at the Dallas Guitar Show a few years back, and at the end of the show, we were going to walk out, and there was somebody that was just blaring like a bassman.
Yeah.
And playing leads. And as we're walking out, we were all annoyed, because we're like, we have heard nothing but noise like at the NAMM show all day. And we're like, the show's done. Like, stop playing. But it sounded incredible. And as we turned the corner, it's Brad Whitford. And I'm like, that's why. And I would never, ever have the confidence to play well at that volume in a big empty hall like that without being like, oh, this I'm gonna hit a wrong note and it's gonna fret out and it's gonna sound terrible, right? And but yeah, I get you when you see those guitar players that like they like it loud, and and they can rip. Bonamassa the same way. The only time I met Joe, he was testing some amps at soundcheck, and as I walked up to the building, I could hear it outside, and just
I think Eric Johnson's that same way too.
Yep. Yeah. So, well, hey man, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us about stuff today. Yeah, appreciate it.
I got to figure out where I'm going to get a T-shirt like that.
Oh, that's easy. Yeah, that we can easily send you.
Nice.
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks, Dan.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Awesome.